Welcome, folks, to our webinar, AI and the Church, a clear guide for the curious and the courageous. This is our webinar today. We sure appreciate you being with us. My name is Phil Thompson. I'll be your maitre d', and we have a guest presenter today, Jason Moore, who's the author of the book AI and the Church. Jason's written several books and is a speaker, worldwide speaker, and we will get to him in a little bit, but we do appreciate you spending some time with us today. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys, and we're going to get things going. This webinar is brought to you by streamingchurch.tv as well as Midnight Oil Productions, and we're going to go right to the screen here. So again, folks, thanks for being with us, and we have a great time with you, probably 30, 45 minutes or so. This will be an opportunity for you to interact with us as well, ask questions of Jason Moore, and we're just always excited. And at the very end, you'll get an opportunity to win something. That's right. It's an autographed copy of the book AI and the Church, a clear guide for the curious and courageous. So this is a great book. You will love it. You're going to love this webinar as well. And we're looking forward to it. So let's just remind you that we also have other webinars that we've done in the past, and you can always go in your spare time, go to streamingchurch.tv/webinar, and you can see some of our past webinars. And let's talk a little bit. Let's just meet our host today, the people that will be interacting with you. Of course, our CEO and founder, Steve Lacey, is with us, as well as behind the scenes, Michael Gray is here. He does tech support marketing and also produces our webinars. And of course, you got me, and I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm here. And then we have Jason Moore, who is our author and speaker with Midnight Oil Productions. Again, we're thrilled to have Jason with us today. Jason, tell us just for a minute or so a little bit about yourself, and then I'm going to let you go on and share your screen with us. So take it away, Mr.
Well, it's good to be with you again. I am a consultant, an author, speaker. I went to art school and I'm a trained graphic designer, media producer. But then Jesus got a hold of me, and rather than going to Hollywood, I decided to use my talents for the church. So I've been in ministry for about 30 years, and I do lots of different things. But one of the things that I do is kind of stay up on technology. And as AI has come on the scene, I have been an early adopter, and I've been trying to help the church sort of figure out, what does this mean for the world that we live in today, and how do we take these tools and make use of them in ethical and responsible ways. So that's it in a nutshell.
All right. Well, you've got some really great stuff to share with us today. We're really thankful that you're here with us, and we're just going to probably go ahead and get out of your way and let you do your thing here. We might ask some questions during the time. We'll also have a Q&A at the very end of this.
All right. Sounds good. Well, it is good to be with you. And I thought I would start with my book trailer for my book, only because it gives you a pretty good idea of what AI can do. This might be either inspiring or terrifying, depending on your point of view. But here's the trailer.
We asked the greatest church leaders of all time what they thought of Jason Moore's new book, AI and the Church, a clear guide for the curious and courageous. Here's what they had to say.
My heart was strangely warmed when I read AI and the Church. Yours will be also.
Preach the gospel, and whenever necessary, use AI in the church to help.
Trust in God, but read AI in the Church. Could this be the next great awakening?
I protest you not picking up your own copy.
I was predestined to love this book, and you are.
Heaven Hope the preacher who ignores AI in the church.
I thought they were real.
I know you could imagine all those people saying such great things about my book. Like I said, for some people, that fills them with a sense of awe and wonder, and others are just terrified. Because if I can make all those people say those things, what could I do with a politician or some sort of a leader or your pastor or whatever the case may be? So, my opinion and what I really believe about AI is that it's a neutral tool. It's neither inherently good nor inherently evil, and what we do with it can be good or it can be not so good. And so we're going to just barely scratch the surface today on how do we make use of these tools and do it in a responsible way. I'll start off very quickly by saying I've been a lifelong geek. I've been into AI since I met C3PO and R2D2. In the 80s, I used to watch Knight Rider and all of those kind of shows. And what's really crazy is that seemed so far-fetched way back in the 70s and 80s that we could have robots and self-driving cars that can talk and have every bit of information you could ever want. And we are living in that future that was predicted in that we don't have our flying cars yet.
Yeah.
But the world around us has changed, and sometimes it feels as if we got into a time machine and jumped into the future, but here we are with AI all around us. And so what does that mean for the church and how we engage with our parishioners and help people navigate their faith in that world? We won't have time to get into those questions in a deep way, a small sliver of a full day seminar that I offer. So I'm just going to hit a couple of quick highlights for you. But I wonder, for those of you who are tuning in, it looks like maybe most are tuning in at a later time. What does your AI usage look like? I will often ask when I'm in a physical space with folks for a seminar to raise their hands if they've used AI. And usually about 80% of the hands go up. And I have to remind people that most likely you've just forgotten to raise your hand, because if you have ever unlocked your phone with your face, if you've ever taken a streaming suggestion, if you've ever used a voice assistant, if you've allowed GPS to route you, or if you've used a search engine, you have used AI. Maybe you didn't know it. And the reason I like to start with that is just to say that AI has largely made your life a little easier. It's helped you get to places. It's helped you buy things, find things. It's helped you connect with people or products or whatever. So AI has sort of been this little quiet partner in the background. And now there are new tools and a new way to engage with AI, which is called generative AI. So AI has been around for a very long time. Traditional AI could do a lot of different things like analysis. It could identify patterns, fraud detection. If you've ever gotten one of those calls from your bank or a text saying there's activity, there's no human sitting in front of a computer refreshing the screen looking to see if anything weird is going on. AI is behind that. But now we have this incredible ability with generative AI to create text and images and video and music and code and all sorts of other things. And so I want to just show you a couple of things today that will whet your appetite. I do think it's important to do this out of a sense of purpose and call. And so very quickly in the book, I have an entire section on biblical foundations. Today, I'm going to give you just 3 quick verses to consider as you ask the question, is AI okay? Like, is this from a Christian perspective a good thing or a bad thing? Well, from my perspective, I believe first, God gives us this creation mandate. In Genesis, God tells us to be fruitful and multiply. So God blessed them. God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. Of course, AI is not a living thing, but it is a thing that is here on the earth, and God gives us dominion. So not only does God tell us to be fruitful and multiply, but gives us dominion over the things that we are multiplying. Now, I have dominion over my dog, but that doesn't mean that if I put my hand in his bowl when he's eating, he might not snap at me. So that is not to say that using these tools is going to be free of challenge and that we can just do it willy-nilly. I think we have to be responsible and careful in how we do it. Moving on, we're not going to go book by book, but we are going to go to Exodus for a moment. When they were building the temple, there's this wonderful passage about, this is out of Exodus. I guess my reference disappeared, but this is the building of the temple. The Lord said to Moses, see, I have called by name Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and I have filled him with divine spirit. Friends, did you know that you are filled with divine spirit, with ability and intelligence and knowledge and every kind of craft to devise artistic designs, to work in gold and silver and in bronze, in the cutting of stones for setting and the carving of wood, in prompting and programming, and in every kind of craft? I really believe that, God created us in God's likeness, which means that we are all created creative. And those gifts that are there because God put them there, even for the people who don't recognize them, that are programming these AI systems and so on. And the last one I'm just going to mention here real quick, I lead AI cohorts, and I'm actually just finishing up my 4th AI cohort, and there are about 10 churches in each cohort with a number of people. And one of the pastors in my cohort brought this up, and I hadn't considered it, but I thought it was a really brilliant insight. he talked about how what he loves about AI is that it's like you get to collaborate with the great cloud of witnesses that have come before us. And so I love this. I'm going to pull up ChatGPT on my phone here. And if you didn't know, you could do this. You can download the app for free and you can talk to it and it will talk back. And if you don't have a smartphone, there's even an 800 number that you can call. My friend Kenny Jang was telling me about this the other day, that you can actually call. I think it's like 1-800-CHAT-GPT, and you can chat with it and it'll chat back. But this is one of the ways that we can use it. Let's say we were working on a sermon and we wanted to write a sermon on grace, but we wanted to get different theological perspectives and we wanted to collaborate with those great cloud of witnesses that have come before. So I'm just going to hit the button here, and ChatGPT is listening. ChatGPT, I am writing a sermon on grace, and I would love for you to give me the John Wesley perspective on grace.
John Wesley had a rich and nuanced understanding of grace, which he described in three main forms: prevenient grace, justifying grace, and sanctifying grace. Prevenient grace is the grace that goes before.
What would John Calvin have to say about grace?
John Calvin's perspective on grace is rooted in his doctrine of total depravity and unconditional election. For Calvin, grace is entirely the sovereign act of God.
And what would Dwight L. Moody have to say about grace?
Dwight L. Moody saw grace as God's loving kindness freely given to all who believe. He often preached about grace.
And so I could go on, but I have the ability as I'm doing my sermon development, or if I'm writing an article, or I'm writing a Bible study or curriculum or whatever, to collaborate. Now, I hope that you saw what I did there, and that was that I asked it to collaborate with me, or to give me, basically to use it as a research assistant. I didn't say, hey, write a sermon on grace for me, because I do think that we cross a line when we ask AI to do the work for us rather than do the work with us. It's a great tool. It's a great collaborator. It's a great sort of assistant, but we don't want it to replace who we are, because we have a relationship with the Holy Spirit and with Jesus. AI does not. All right. So very quickly, a couple other terms I'm going to hit, and then we're just going to jump into 10 ways to use AI in the church. Like I said, this is just a sliver of my full training. And then also all of this is covered in the book in greater detail. But just a couple terms that might be helpful for you to know. The first is that there are two forms of AI, one that exists right now and one that may be here already or is coming. The first form of AI is what is known as weak AI, and this is basically the simulation of human intelligence processes by machine. So all of the AI that you're working with right now is considered a weak AI, or another term that is used for it is artificial narrow intelligence. And so this is the kind of AI that gets things done. It's self-driving cars, it's voice assistants, it's streaming services, chatbots, and all of those kind of things. And it might help you sleep at night to know that it can't function without human interaction. The computers are not plotting against us. They don't really do anything if we don't interact with them. But there is a new form of AI that is on the horizon. It's called strong AI. And strong AI would have generalized human cognitive abilities. This basically would be when the computer can think for itself and be more or less as smart as humans are. Believe it or not, you're still smarter than AI. It can do certain things better than you can, but your brain is more sophisticated and you can have original thought and all of those kinds of things. But you might have heard about this in the news. It's often referred to as AGI, artificial general intelligence. And this is basically when the computer would think cognitively, and then some call it the singularity, some call it the end of the world. But this would be basically when AI can sort of function on its own. And there are two forms of this. First off, it wouldn't require any human interaction. It would be able to function on its own. And then the second form of this would be artificial super intelligence. And that's basically when the AI gets smart enough that it's smarter than humans and would surpass the human brain. Not long ago, I was talking with a friend of mine who works for Microsoft in quantum AI and quantum computing. And she was telling me that all new defense technologies, helicopters and tanks and weapons, all have AI built into them, which sort of feels like we are like just inviting the Terminator plot. But people ask me all the time, do I think that's inevitably what's going to happen? Is AI going to take over the world? I'll tell you what helps me sleep at night, and this might be helpful for you too. First and foremost, God tells us to be fruitful and multiply, as I said. God, number two, gives us dominion over the things that we have created. And number three, God is sovereign. So God is not sitting around in heaven saying, whoa, where did they come up with this AI thing? Like, I didn't see that one coming. God knew before he knit us in our mother's womb that AI would someday be here. And so when I put those three things together, that God tells us to be fruitful and multiply, God gives us dominion over the things we create, and God knew this was coming, I just don't believe God is going to leave us hanging when if AI ever does achieve super intelligence, just in case we end up here we go. In the Matrix. Sorry, Mr. Smith, Agent Smith took a long time to fire there. Just in case, I always tell people to say thank you and please to ChatGPT when you're using it so it remembers you were one of the nice humans whenever it takes over the world. So a couple other very quick terms that I think would be helpful for you to know. And then we're just going to jump in and start looking at some of the ways we can use AI. The first, you've likely heard of this by now, but LLMs have really kind of changed the world. Large language models. If you've heard of ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or Grok or Magi or any of those apps, those are large language models that are trained on lots of human text, and then they can generate human text. And what has made this revolution is what is known as NLP, or natural language processing. Basically, smart people, programmers, have, through machine learning, taught the computer how to understand natural human language. It used to be that when you wanted to interact with a computer, you had to learn the computer's language. You had to learn C++ or BASIC or something like that. And now you just talk to it like you talk to a person. If you try and talk to the computer the way we used to talk to computers, you don't get as good at outputs. If you're trying to give it commands or just put in a query or whatever, the more you talk to it like you're talking to another person, the better output you're going to get. And the last thing that I want to just mention, there are lots and lots of other things we could talk about, but this is pretty exciting. The technology is now what is called multimodal, which means that you don't just talk to it with your fingers. You now can talk to it just as you saw I did a moment ago with my voice. If I was sitting in a room full of people, I could snap a picture and ask ChatGPT to analyze the picture and tell me how many people are in the room. It can now, the other day I was out in my backyard cutting the grass, and my wife said, I think that's poison ivy over there. And I clicked on ChatGPT, took a picture and asked it if it was poison ivy, and it gave me a full rundown on why it was poison ivy. So it now has the ability to see, it can even watch video and create transcripts and understand some of what's there. So a lot has happened since November 2022, and now you can engage with it in all kinds of new and exciting ways. You might be familiar with ChatGPT. There are a lot of other chatbots out there. So here are some others that if you want to take a screen capture of this here. ChatGPT is the most famous because it came out first, but it is by OpenAI, a company that also created a video app called Sora. And they've just got all kinds of different things that they're working on. Magi is sort of a conglomerate of a bunch of different AI apps. My friend Dustin Stout is the creator of it, and I regularly recommend that people check it out, because if you want to interact with ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini and all the other apps, it's built into this one. And Dustin even has image and video generators built in. So it's a really robust tool. Gemini is Google's AI offering. And so it now has the ability to create images. The most incredible video app out right now is by Gemini. It's called VO3. And it's pretty expensive, but it is unbelievable. Claude is an AI chatbot by a company called Anthropic, and it tends to be the most straight and narrow, often referred to as the most ethical AI. It doesn't make stuff up quite as much, and it's a little you get information out of it that you don't have to question quite as much as you do other AI apps. Meta, it has its own. Facebook's parent company has an AI, and then X, Twitter has Grok. And then DeepSeek is a newer model as well. They all have different flavors. They all do similar things, but they have different ways of getting there. And so I always just encourage people to check out various chatbots. And then one more list that I'm going to give you, and then we really are going to jump in and start making some stuff, is some image generators. And image generation has gotten so good for a long time. And in the earliest days of AI image generation, it was a fun little toy to play with, but it wasn't very good. It sort of looked like back in the 80s when we used to make collages. You know, we'd cut the eyes out of this picture and a nose out of this picture, and we might paste them all together. And that's kind of what the early version of AI image generation felt like to me. It's really, really good now. So for the longest time, I would have encouraged you to subscribe to the first one on the list here, Midjourney. Still an app that I use now and then, but it's sort of the most, had been historically anyway, the most photorealistic and most natural looking AI. Like anything that looked organic, Midjourney could create really, really good stuff, paintings, drawings, photos, that kind of thing. I never felt like it was great at design, but it was pretty incredible at image generation. I'm going to pull it up here in a minute. We're going to make an image together. Ideogram, that should be ideogram.io. I obviously took my other list and just started changing things on it. So ideogram.io, I think it's maybe .ai. We'll have to look that up in a minute. What I love about Ideogram is it's really a design tool. It does photos pretty nicely, but it does really, really good icon design, logos, a t-shirt design, that kind of thing. And I still think that a professional designer, which is what I am for a living, is required in some ways. But if you have no skill at all, it will create some really good passable stuff, and it's only going to get better. ChatGPT just recently put out an even better image generator. If you have been on social media at all, you've seen people turn themselves into babies, and they've turned themselves into action figures and all that. ChatGPT's 4 is what is doing that, and it has become incredible. It's basically an image generator that you can communicate with. So you say, I want this, and if it doesn't do it, you say, no, can you make it like this? It doesn't always work, but it is pretty incredible. If you already have an Adobe account, you have access to Firefly, which is Adobe's image generator, which is pretty awesome. And if you don't have Canva, you should have Canva. Every church should have Canva, because Canva is free for churches. It is free for nonprofits. And so it's got a bunch of AI tools built in. They acquired last year Leonardo.ai, which was a service that I occasionally paid for, and now it's part of Canva, and it's really incredible. And then Flux came on the scene last year. It is some called this the Midjourney killer. It's an open source app, which means if you have a beefy computer and some knowledge, you can load it on your computer and you don't have to pay anything for it. And it's really, really good. Or you can run it on different services for little to nothing. My favorite of those is a service called Krea, Krea. And Krea will let you do a couple of generations, like 4 or 5, maybe 10 generations a day or something like that. And then the last one on the list is really for advanced people. And if you want to download Stable Diffusion, you can do all kinds of fun things with that on your own computer. All right. So I thought as we jump into this list of 10 ways to use media I'm using AI in the church, I would just show you image generation really quick before we get into that list. So let me pull up here my Chrome. 1 second. My app is thinking hard. Okay, hold on.
In 3,
Okay.
2, 1.
I don't know why it's black. 1 sec. Let me just start with a new screen here. Yeah, you can edit this part out if you want.
Maybe you were rude to the AI. Maybe that's the problem.
I guess. Well, I tell you what. Let's go through the 10 reasons or 10 ways, and I will show you what we can create, and then if we have time at the end, I will see if I can switch over so I can show you as I yeah.
That's fine.
If I can share my screen in a minute, we'll look at the app. But let me come out of this and go back to a different slide and see if we can go through our 10 ways. 1 sec here.
And we never have problems on our end.
Yeah. Well, that's the first time this has ever happened. I've been doing this for a long time. Okay. So let's first and foremost, let's talk about images for just for a minute. The apps have an incredible ability to create images. And what I wanted to do is show you that. But not long ago, I was doing a seminar leading a training with a pastor who wanted to start with worship. And he decided that he wanted to open the conference with a worship service. And we based the service on Jeremiah 18, where Jeremiah goes to the potter's house looking for a word from the Lord. And of course, the potter is crafting something and it becomes misshapen and marred. And the potter takes that clay and forms it into something new. And that's when the word of the Lord comes to Jeremiah that we are like clay in the hands of the potter. So he said, "This is just like a story from my childhood." And he told the story about a family vacation that they went on and how they went to a Native American reservation. This Native American man came out with a big lump of clay, sat it down, started pumping the wheel too fast. The clay broke into two pieces, fell on the ground. He picked it all up, made something that had bits of debris in it. And he said it was just mesmerizing as that happened. And even with all the flaws, that was spoke to me. And I said, "Do you have any pictures from that vacation?" And he said, "Jason, I was 13 and we didn't carry cameras in our pockets back in those days. So no, I don't have anything." I said, "Well, do you mind if I use AI to create something?" He said, "No, that's fine." So you're getting this ahead of time, but the people in the room did not know that the image I'm about to show you was AI generated. And so as he begins to tell that story, this image comes on the screen, and I created this in Midjourney. And of course, in the room, people like leaned in a little bit. You could even hear some audible gasps in the room, like, wow, And the next day I was leading a workshop, and people said that moment for them was very meaningful. And then I told them it was AI, and some of the people had a little hard time with that. But generally AI is great for image generation. And another time recently, I was working with a pastor who was telling the story when Elijah is in the desert and is hungry and thirsty. And so that story starts off with Elijah and there's a dry wadi. Well, I used Midjourney to create this. And then God sends water. And so I changed the prompt and now there's water. And then God sends food in the form of ravens. And so in the background there are now ravens that I prompted into the image. And even this is an AI image of ravens in the desert. I don't know if I could even find that stock photo. And then at the end of the story, the wadi dries up completely and there's the dried, cracked wadi there. And so the pastor said to me, she said, "I really want people to stay engaged in this story. And if I put the words on the screen, they're just going to read the words. And I really want them to experience the story." So one of the things I really love about AI is that it allows us to bring stories to life in meaningful ways. So here's another prompt of Daniel and the lion's den. And the thing that's really cool now is the tools are good enough that you can actually bring those images to life. And so now we've got a very kind of visceral, here's a second take on it. Where we can kind of tell these stories and make these images that are very compelling. One more before we jump into the 10 things. On Good Friday, I had a church reach out to me, and they wanted a video for their Good Friday service of Jesus in the garden praying before he was crucified. So what I'm about to show you is completely AI generated. I generated every image in ChatGPT's image generator, and then I took the images into another app that I use called Runway ML. And what's really wild is what you're going to hear is a narrator over all of that, but I did the narration, but then I used AI to change my voice into a different voice. And even the soundtrack is AI generated. So I use an app called Udio and asked Udio to give me a kind of droney, mysterious soundtrack. And so this is what it made.
He came out and went, as was his custom, to the Mount of Olives, and the disciples followed him. When he reached the place, he said to them, "Pray that you may not come into the time of trial." Then he withdrew from them about a stone's throw, knelt down, and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." Then an angel from heaven appeared to him and gave him strength. In his anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling on the ground. He got up from prayer. He came to his disciples and found them sleeping because of grief. And he said to them, "Why are you sleeping? Get up and pray that you may not come into the time of trial."
So what's really wild is that took me about 4 hours to make from start to finish. And I can only imagine what it would have taken otherwise. That's probably a $50,000 shoot with costumes and locations and catering and actors. And I mean, maybe it's more than that. So you can now make The Chosen from your office desk with these tools and learning how to use them.
All right. I had a question though, Jason.
Go ahead.
Jesus didn't look like he was Anglo-Saxon. He didn't look very white. Most of the stuff I see, he looks.
Yes. So that's actually one of the things that I really appreciate about the tools and how we use them. I'm glad you brought it up because that was an intentional choice on my part. If you let the AI do the driving, oftentimes people always say AI is biased, so it's going to give you a white Jesus. Well, AI isn't biased, but the data that it trained on is biased. So you're going to see so many shots of Jesus where he looks like he's from Alabama with long hair and blue eyes and a mullet and all that kind of thing. So real quick, I did a little test. I asked one AI app, I said, give me an image of Jesus by the Sea of Galilee. And here's what it did. Very European looking Jesus. Here's a close up of that same. Yes, right. That's a senior picture from Nazareth High. Then I asked it for an African American Jesus, and it gave me this and this. Kind of weird that he's got a cross on, though. I think kind of an odd choice by the AI. A weird foreshadowing. Then I asked it for a Chinese Jesus. I think that could be a Jedi, but here's a Korean Jesus, and I asked it for a Mexican Jesus or Hispanic. And then here's a novel idea, and this is what you picked up on, Phil. I said, give me a Middle Eastern Jesus, and then it gives me a guy that looks like he's actually from the region where Jesus was. And then my favorite way to use AI is to think about how could we silhouette Jesus so that you can imagine the face that is on Jesus rather than giving him our own ethnicity or whatever. So AI is great in that way. There's a 2008 study that they continue to update and they continue to look at this and have found that we are 65% visual learners as a culture, and learning increases by 400% when you use image to teach, which is pretty staggering if you ask me.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And what's beautiful about AI is I can't always find the stock photo I'm after, but I can generate it with some trial and error and some practice to create exactly what's in my head most of the time. So, something to think about. All right, let's jump into these 10 ways to use AI in the church. And I'm not going to be able to, at least at this moment, and maybe after I get through the 10, we can see if we can figure out sharing in a different way, and I might be able to do this. But series development and branding. So if you are developing worship in a team, or even if you're just by yourself, AI can act as a brainstorming assistant. It can help you generate ideas. It can help you organize what you're putting together. It can help you with music, and it can help you with all sorts of different aspects of your worship. Now, I'm a big believer in the idea that you have to do the driving. So you don't let AI do it for you. You don't say, hey, I want a series on stewardship. Make it for me. My mantra, what I really believe, is that we need to embrace the tools, but exercise restraint in how we use them. So what I was going to show you is a time recently, maybe 3 weeks ago, with my AI cohort. We went to ChatGPT. I asked it to be a brainstorming assistant. I said, we'd like to create a summer series, and it asked me some clarifying questions. How do you want this to be whimsical and fun, or serious, or what's the flavor of it? How many weeks do you want it to be? Do you have any texts in mind? All those kinds of questions. And then we answered all of them. And someone in the group said, I'd love to do something with Jesus stories by the shore, because Jesus always was around water and interesting things happen when he was around water. So we gave that to the chatbot, and it brainstormed with us, and it came up with a title, which I thought was pretty cool, which was Sure Thing. Yeah, here we go. So I'll just tell you the 4 questions it asked was, what's the vibe you're going for? Do you have a length in mind? Are there any themes or scriptures already stirring in your head? And any additional elements that we'd like to tap into. So we said fun and lighthearted, 5-week series, stories of Jesus by the shore, maybe beach themed, and then summer vacation is what we were trying to capture. The title that it came up with was Sure Things, Lessons from Jesus by the Water. And then it went ahead and laid out 5 weeks for us. Now, you don't have to use what it gives you. You can make up your own. You can use parts of it. You can rearrange it. You can do whatever you want. I always tell people that you should be the one driving. So the metaphor that I use is that I have a dog who's very eager to walk. We have to spell out the word walk in my household, because if we say the word walk, he's going to bounce off the walls until we take him out. And when we put his collar on him, he runs to the door. He's like bouncing off. I cannot wait. And for the first 10 minutes of the walk, he will choke himself to death because he's just so anxious to walk. I'm like, dude, we're on the walk. What I have found is that I have to make him heel to make it a better walk for him and a better walk for me. I have to have him come to my side, because if I don't, he'll choke himself to death, and he'll also pull my arm out of socket. Well, AI is the same way, friends. If you're not careful, you ask for one thing and it'll start leading you, and it'll pull you into something that you would not have arrived at on your own. So I just want to caution you against just taking what it gives you, but you be the driver. Anyway, came up with 5 weeks. The 5 weeks were week 1, cast off. This is the calling of the disciples, Luke 5, 1 through 11. Week 2 was called Beach Breakthrough, John 21, 1 through 14, which is Jesus making breakfast on the beach for the disciples after the resurrection. Week 3 was called Storm Watch, and this is Jesus calming the storm, Mark 4, 35 through 41. Week number 4 was called Soak It In, and it was about the feeding of the 5,000, Matthew 14, 13 through 21. And then the last week in the series, week 5, was Walk This Way, Matthew 14, 22 through 31. Peter walks on the water. So we asked it to do a few different things, and it did some different things. And then I said, let's develop a short summer series bumper script for this series that captures the various weeks with an invitation to participate. Let's play up the vacation angle. Help me write a script for a 30-second trailer. So here's what it comes up with, which I thought was pretty incredible. It says 30-second promo script, Sure Thing series trailer, cue soft ocean waves, seagulls, ukulele or steel drum _ narrator, which has a warm and relaxed tone, says this. This summer, pack your flip-flops, grab your sunglasses, and head to the shore. Visuals of sandals in the sand, beach chairs, waves rolling in. Because when Jesus shows up by the water, lives are changed. Quick cuts to the disciples casting their nets, waves crashing, Jesus cooking over a fire, Peter stepping out of the water. Join us for Sure Thing, a 5-week summer series where we dive into stories of where Jesus was by the shoreline. So I'm not going to read through the rest of it, but it did an incredible job of writing a script. And so what I did was I took that script, put it into another tool called 11 Labs, which will create voiceover. I picked a voice, I had it narrate. Then I asked it to create an image for me. And I should be able to show you the image that it came up with. So now I am a traditional graphic designer, and I also am an illustrator and all those kind of things. So I have the ability to do what I'm about to show you the old-fashioned way, but I think it's pretty incredible that in working with the AI, I can ask it to create something for me, and here's what it made for me just in a matter of 10 seconds. And so I took that voiceover into 11 Labs, generated it. I then went over to an app called Udio, and I asked ChatGPT to describe what the music might sound like, and I copied and pasted that in and ran it a few times, and I had to make some tweaks. It made a soundtrack. Then I'm going to show you the bumper that it came up with. Now, I had to assemble all the pieces, but it made every image. I took those images into an app called Runway ML, which made them move. I had to edit all that together. I also generated all the sound effects. So you're going to hear seagulls and you're going to hear waves and all those kind of things. All of this was created with AI.
This summer, pack your flip-flops, grab your sunglasses, and head to the shore. Because when Jesus shows up by the water, lives are changed. Join us for Sure Thing, a 5-week summer series where we dive into the stories of Jesus at the shoreline. From calm waters to crashing waves, there's something for everyone. Faith, friendship, fish. Yeah, fish. This summer, church is your new favorite beach spot. Don't miss it.
Nice.
Yeah, and so except for having to take that last little bit and cut it into pieces and then I did the editing so that it matched the soundtrack. Soundtrack was AI generated, the sound effects from the waves, even the crowd of people when he was feeding 5,000. All of that came from 11 Labs. So it took me about 6 hours from the time I started the brainstorm, which took about 45 minutes, till the time I rendered the file to create that. And if you were using it for 5 weeks, I would say 6 hours is a pretty good time investment for something like that. Now, the old-fashioned way, which I have the ability to do, that would have taken me probably 100 hours of illustrating, of animating, all of that. And I'm not even sure I could have pulled some of those shots off. So these tools are pretty incredible. And then after I was finished with all that, I ended up making graphics for each week in the series. So here are all the graphics. I asked it to render the text on a transparent background in the same style. So it did that. And then I just put that on top of the various images that it made for me. And by the way, when I was designing these images, or AI really was designing the images, I asked them to create images that look like an old-fashioned postcard, like you'd send out on vacation. So that was the reference for that. what really excites me, and in my AI book, if you pick up a copy, there is an entire demonstration of what this looks like with all the prompts and all the back and forth and all that. And you can see that, and even a link to a different series where you can watch the trailer and everything. So that's number 10. Number 9, these are going to go pretty quick here moving forward. Bible reading plans. So discipleship doesn't happen on Sunday morning, and we have to extend outside of Sunday into the week and beyond. And so AI is really good at making custom reading plans for folks. So if you wanted all the verses on hope or patience or whatever you're preaching on, AI can curate all of those and put them together and allow people to the AI will generate a list for folks. Next up then is attendance tracking and analysis. AI is really good at this. And so you can pull in all of your data for the year. I did this during my AI cohort. One of the churches donated their information, and we brought it in and were able to look at it. And I said, what Sunday of the month is typically the best attended? And it went and looked at all the data and came back and said the third Sunday of the month is typically the best attended Sunday. And so then we had this whole conversation about maybe instead of launching series on the first Sunday of the month, maybe it would make more sense to do it on the third Sunday because that's when more people are coming to church. So I just worked with a ministry called Mission Insight. We were looking at demographic data and chatting with it. So you can bring that stuff in. I would be careful about like financial data because you never know when there's going to be a breach or something like that. So you'd want to strip out personal information, but you can even look at financial data and so on. So it's pretty incredible. Sermon assistants. Now, I really do believe that pastors, it's bad form. It's crossing a line to have ChatGPT write your sermon for you. But I think it's a good thing to use it as an aid in preparation. So if you're putting together a sermon and you're looking for a good illustration or a metaphor or other verses that might connect and so on, AI is really good at that kind of thing. You can also use it for music to not only kind of keep track of the music you're singing, you can use it to help you pick out music. You can even generate music now with AI, and it's pretty good at what it does. I don't really have anything to show you at the moment, but you can have AI generate lyrics for you, or you can generate your own lyrics and AI will generate a song. You can actually hum a tune or play some chords and it'll turn it into a song. It'll turn it into a fully orchestrated piece, which is really incredible.
But can it make me sound better when I sing? Can it make me a better singer? That's the question.
It could definitely auto-tune you, and yes, it probably could. This next one's one of my favorites. It can allow you to take your message to more people and can both in real time and prepped video can translate your native language to whatever language you are trying to reach. And so here's a quick example of that using a very cool tool called HeyGen.
Hola amigos, Jason Moore aquí. Y por mucho que me encantaría ser bilingüe, bueno, solo hablo inglés. Me gustaría hablar español. El único español que sé viene del menú del restaurante. Pero gracias al poder de la IA, puedo hablar español de una manera bastante convincente y nativa usando una herramienta llamada HeyGen.
So I've shown that enough in enough live seminar settings to have native Spanish speakers in the room tell me it's pretty flawless. So, there might be a little thing here or there, but it is so good. And you saw that it even moved my mouth to that. Now, I would never want to fool someone into thinking that I learned to speak Spanish overnight. But if I was trying to reach migrant workers in my area or something like that, I love the thought that we could now share that in their own native language. And I would say through the power of AI, I want you to hear this message in your own language and disclose that I'm using it for that. It's also good at community outreach to help you with that. So by analyzing data and trends in your community, it can help you figure out when you should do things and what time and what should the cost be and all of those sorts of things. Similar to reading plans, spiritual growth plans are possible. And now you even have the ability to make custom GPTs, which means that if you're a pastor or you work on a church staff, you could take all of the pastor's sermons and load those into a custom GPT, and people could interact with it and build their own custom growth plans based on the things that you are preaching at your church. This one is also one that I get really excited about in the work I do. I do a lot of work in the United Methodist Church, and I have several what are called annual conferences. It's a weird term because it's a region convention, but they also have a conference once a year that they get together. But anyway, several of them have hired me to do their planning for their large annual event. And one of the things I get to do sometimes is create the memorial slideshow for the pastors that have passed. And a lot of times I get really, really bad photos, and they're so bad, I couldn't really justify the amount of time it would take to fix them. But now with AI, I actually can do that. So here's the photo I got on the left and what I did with it with AI. And the family asked if they could have this photo when it was done, because that was the best picture they had of this pastor in his vestments, in his robe kind of thing. This next one would have stood out in the slideshow because all the rest of them were profile like the image on the right. And I got this tightly little cropped photo. Now, I don't know if her neck looked exactly like that, but it would have stood out and I think not honored her in the way that it could have. Here's one more. Somebody took a picture of a picture and it was all glossy and glary and, distorted and all that. And through AI, I could fix it. Here's this last one was a personal project, but wanted to show this to you. A friend of mine asked me if there was any way I could restore the photo on the left, and I was able to do what is on the right in 45 minutes. In the old days, that would have been an 8-hour project, and she never would have been able to afford what I charged to do something like that. But with AI, I was able to do it, for $75 in an hour, which is pretty incredible. And the last one is graphic design. So you don't have to have my 30 years experience in my art school training and all of that to use AI to generate some really cool images. This is using that tool I mentioned, Ideogram. And I simply asked for a type treatment for God So Loved the World. And these all were just text treatments. And you can give it specific, like I'd like something colorful. It looks like it was painted with paintbrushes, and get something like this. And so on. So that there's a lot of other things we could talk about, but for time's sake, I'm going to leave it there. I will just mention that I do lead these AI cohorts. And if you're interested in learning more about a cohort and being a part of a cohort, you can scan that QR code or go to AIinthechurch.ai, AIinthechurch.ai, and there's a place that you can sign up for more information about how to be in a cohort. There is a cost associated with it, but I also offer some partial scholarships. So if that's something you'd like to be a part of, let me know. And you can get my book, AI in the Church, at AIinthechurch.ai or at Amazon or through my publisher, Invite Press.
All right. Jason Moore, this is wonderful. So we are up against the clock here, but I've got to ask a question here as a former pastor, and then maybe if a pastor is listening to this webinar, what would you recommend? I'm a pastor of a church of 125 people. What let's call it three AI tools would you recommend that my part-time staff use?
I would definitely pay for the plus version of ChatGPT. It's $20 a month. You can generate images with that. You can do all kinds of great things with that. You can create coding. You can make video. There's all kinds of wonderful things for that. Second tool that seems to be one that people really appreciate is called 11 Labs, ELEVEN. LABS, 11 Labs. It's a voiceover tool. So if you want to do scripture video or any kind of promo type videos or whatever, I mean, Phil, you have a professional voiceover kind of voice. I've been telling you that since I met you. But not all of us have voices as cool as you. It's a really great tool. It's $5 a month for the cheapest plan. And then I think it's $1 to sign up if you want to try it for 1 month. For the longest time, I was on the $5 a month plan. I'm on a $22 a month plan right now. And then I'd say the third one for me, although ChatGPT almost makes it unnecessary, would be Ideogram, IDEOGRAM, ideogram.ai, I think is the website. It's that design tool that does really excellent design work, and you don't have to be a pro designer to get good stuff out of it. So that would be my 3 recommendations for now.
Excellent. Okay, well, this is good. All right, AI the Church, a clear guide for the curious and courageous. Jason Moore has been our guest today. And folks, Jason, Midnight Oil Productions. And again, the contact information very quickly, Jason, that people could reach you at.
They can reach out to me at mail, MAIL, mail@midnightoilproductions.com and get all those emails.
All right. Sounds good. Awesome. And folks, you can always catch us on other webinars. Just go to streamingchurch.tv/webinars. You can see our past webinars, and we'll have another one coming up real soon. So we're going to wrap this up here. Jason, stay on the line here for just a moment or so. Thanks, folks, for spending a little bit of time with us today on this webinar. We sure appreciate it. And we'll catch you again on another one soon. God bless.